AITA for refusing to keep letting my brother use my house as his backup home after he ignored my one rule. I'm 34, and I bought my house about 4 years ago. It was a huge deal for me because I grew up in a pretty chaotic household where nothing ever felt stable. My parents were the kind of people who would start projects and never finish them, move furniture around every 2 weeks, and constantly invite relatives to stay for a few days that turned into months. Because of that, I'm very protective of my space now. I like quiet, routine, and knowing exactly who is in my house. My younger brother Mark is 29 and the complete opposite. He's friendly, spontaneous, and honestly kind of irresponsible. I love him, but he tends to bounce from place to place. He's had 3 apartments in 5 years because he keeps moving for jobs, relationships, or just because he needs a change. About a year ago, he called me in a panic because his roommate suddenly moved out and he couldn't afford their apartment alone. He asked if he could crash at my place just for a week or 2 while he found something else. I agreed, but I set one very clear rule: no unannounced guests in my house. If someone was coming over, I needed to know first. That rule exists because of something that happened in college where a roommate invited strangers over constantly, and one of them stole my laptop. Ever since then, I get extremely anxious when people I don't know are in my home. Mark stayed for about 3 weeks that time, and things were fine. He followed the rule, helped with groceries, and eventually found a new place. When he left, he said he really appreciated having a safe backup spot if he ever got into trouble again. Over the past year, that backup spot turned into him occasionally staying over when something went wrong. Once when his heat broke in winter. Once after breakup. Another time when his apartment building had plumbing issues. Each time it was a few days and I didn't mind too much. 2 months ago, though, he showed up again saying his landlord was selling the building and he had to move out quickly. I told him he could stay for a couple weeks while he figured something out, but reminded him about the guest rule. Everything seemed fine for the first week. Then last Friday, I got home from work earlier than usual. As soon as I opened the door, I heard voices and laughter coming from the kitchen. I assumed Mark was on the phone or something, but when I walked in, there were 3 people sitting at my table that I had never seen before. Mark was cooking and chatting like it was totally normal. One guy waved and said, "Oh, hey, you must be the brother." I just stood there confused for a moment and asked Mark who they were. He casually said they were friends from his new job, and they were just hanging out and grabbing dinner. I reminded him that I had one rule about guests. He shrugged and said it wasn't a big deal because they were leaving soon anyway. I'll admit, I got pretty upset. It wasn't just that he broke the rule, it was the way he dismissed it like it didn't matter. I told him I didn't feel comfortable with strangers in my house and asked them to leave. The room got really awkward. His friends looked embarrassed, but they packed up their stuff and left pretty quickly. After the door closed, Mark got angry and said I humiliated him in front of his coworkers. I told him he humiliated himself by ignoring the one thing I asked of him while he was staying here for free. He argued that I was overreacting and acting controlling. According to him, normal people don't freak out over guests, and I should have just let them finish dinner. I told him the issue wasn't dinner, it was respect. I reminded him that he wasn't a tenant. He was staying as a favor. If he couldn't follow the rule, he needed to find somewhere else to stay. Things escalated, and I ended up telling him he had until the end of the weekend to move out. He did leave on Sunday and is currently staying with a friend. But now our parents and some relatives are saying I went too far. They think kicking him out over one small mistake was harsh and that I should have just warned him. Mark has also been telling people that I'm paranoid and obsessed with control. A couple of my cousins said I should apologize for embarrassing him in front of his coworkers. From my perspective, this wasn't some random misunderstanding. I explained the rule multiple times over the past year, and he agreed to it every time he stayed here. Still, the fact that so many family members think I overreacted is making me second-guess myself. So AITA for refusing to keep letting my brother treat my house like his backup home after he broke the one rule I set? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my brother the family house after I spent years paying for it and renovating it while he ignored it. I, 35M, have been dealing with a family conflict that has escalated to the point where half my relatives think I'm selfish, while the other half thinks I'm finally standing up for myself. I'm honestly exhausted by the whole situation and want to know if I'm actually the one being unreasonable here. About 10 years ago, my parents inherited a small house from our grandfather. It's a modest 2-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but still valuable because of the location. At the time, my parents were already dealing with their own mortgage and couldn't afford to maintain another property. My older brother Alex, 39M, and I were both adults, so they asked if either of us wanted to take responsibility for it. Alex immediately said he might want it someday because he liked the idea of owning a house, but he also said he wasn't in a position to pay for anything related to it. He had just started a business that wasn't doing well and said he couldn't commit to any financial responsibilities. I was renting a small apartment at the time, but had a stable job, so I offered to move into the house and take care of the property taxes, maintenance, and utilities. My parents agreed. The understanding was simple. I would live there, cover all the expenses, and keep the property in good shape. The house technically remained in my parents' name at first, but they said eventually they would transfer it to whichever one of us was maintaining it. When I moved in, the house needed a lot of work. The roof leaked during heavy rain. The kitchen appliances were from the early 90s. The bathroom had cracked tiles, and the backyard looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Over time, I invested a lot of money fixing things. I replaced the roof, updated the kitchen, repaired the plumbing, installed new flooring, and slowly improved the yard. None of this was cheap, but I saw it as investing in a place that could eventually be my long-term home. Meanwhile, Alex never contributed anything. He visited occasionally, but mostly treated it like a free place to crash when he was in the area. He even joked a few times about how nice the house was becoming thanks to my work. About 3 years ago, my parents officially transferred the house into my name. They said it made sense since I've been paying for everything and taking care of the property for years. I was grateful and continued working on improvements. Here's where the conflict started. Recently, Alex's business failed, and he went through a messy breakup with his girlfriend. He suddenly needed a place to live. At first, I assumed he was going to ask if he could stay with me temporarily while he got back on his feet, which I would have considered. Instead, he said something that completely surprised me. He told me that since the house originally belonged to our grandfather, it should really be the family house, and that as the older brother, he felt it should belong to him now that he needed it. I thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. He said that I had already had the benefit of living there for years, and that it was only fair for me to give him the house so he could start over. I reminded him that I had paid for every repair, every tax bill, every upgrade, and that our parents legally transferred the house to me. He said that didn't matter because the property had sentimental value for him, and he never agreed that I would permanently own it. I pointed out that he had 10 years to step up and help with the house, but chose not to. Now that it's fully renovated and comfortable, he suddenly feels entitled to it. The situation escalated when he brought our parents into the argument. Surprisingly, they didn't fully take my side. While they acknowledged that the house is legally mine, they said Alex is going through a hard time and suggested I consider giving him the house or at least selling it to him at a very low price. That suggestion honestly made me feel frustrated. I've spent years and a significant amount of money making the house livable and comfortable. It feels unfair to be asked to hand it over just because my brother didn't plan ahead. Alex is now telling relatives that I'm greedy and that I'm hoarding grandpa's house instead of helping family when they're struggling. Some cousins and aunts have messaged me saying I should show compassion and give him the opportunity to rebuild his life there. I offered a compromise. I said he could stay in the guest room for a few months while he figures things out, as long as he contributes to groceries and respects the house rules. He rejected that immediately and said he doesn't want to live under my roof like a guest in what he considers his family home. At this point, he's barely speaking to me and keeps telling people I stole something that was meant for both of us. From my perspective, I invested years of effort, money, and responsibility into a property that nobody else wanted to deal with. Now that it's in good condition and legally mine, I'm suddenly expected to give it away because my brother's situation changed. But the constant pressure from relatives is making me question whether I'm being too rigid. So AITA for refusing to give my brother the house, even though it originally belonged to our grandfather, and he now says he needs it more than I do? AITA for refusing to change my wedding date after my sister announced she was pregnant? I, 29F, am getting married to my fiancé Daniel, 31M, this fall. We got engaged last year and spent months planning the wedding. The venue we wanted is a small countryside estate that books out quickly, so when we finally secured a date, we locked it in immediately and paid a pretty significant deposit. The date we chose is about 14 months after our engagement, which gave us plenty of time to plan and save. My family was really excited when we announced the engagement. My parents adored Daniel, and my younger sister Mia, 27F, seemed happy for us too. At the time, Mia had been married for about 2 years and had mentioned wanting kids eventually, but she never said anything about trying right away. About 3 months ago, we sent out our save the dates. The wedding date is mid-October, and everything has been moving along smoothly. The dress is ordered, the photographer is booked, and most of the major vendors are already confirmed. We have also already put down deposits on the venue, catering, DJ, and florist. About 6 weeks after the save the dates went out, Mia announced that she is pregnant. Everyone was thrilled. This will be the first grandchild in the family, so my parents were over the moon. I was genuinely happy for her too. I love my sister, and I think she'll be a great mom. At first, there didn't seem to be any issue. But a couple of weeks after the announcement, Mia called me and asked if we could talk about the wedding date. I thought she was going to ask about maternity dress options for the bridesmaid dress or something similar. Instead, she told me that her due date is 2 weeks before my wedding. She said that because of this, she probably won't be able to attend. She explained that even if the baby comes exactly on the due date, she will either still be recovering or have a newborn who is only a couple weeks old. She also said there's a chance the baby could come late, which might mean she would literally be in the hospital around the wedding. I told her I completely understood that she might not be able to attend and that it was okay. I said her health and the baby obviously come first. That's when she asked if I would consider moving the wedding date so she could be there. I was honestly surprised because we've already planned everything around that specific date. When I explained that the venue is booked solid for almost a year and that moving the date would mean losing thousands of dollars in deposits, she said family moments are more important than money. I told her that it wasn't just about money. It would also mean rearranging every vendor, possibly losing the venue entirely, and asking all of our guests to change their travel plans. Some people are already flying in from out of state. Mia got upset and said that if I kept the date, I was basically choosing a party over my own sister. She said she had always imagined being there when I got married and that it would break her heart to miss it. I told her I would be sad if she couldn't come too, but the timing of her pregnancy wasn't something I could realistically plan around. She said I was being inflexible and that if the roles were reversed, she would move heaven and earth to make sure I could attend her wedding. After that conversation, things escalated quickly. Mia talked to my parents about it, and now they're also pressuring me to at least consider moving the wedding. My mom keeps saying that weddings can be rescheduled, but the birth of a child is unpredictable and once in a lifetime. I tried explaining again that this isn't like shifting a dinner reservation. We would potentially lose several deposits and might not even get the same venue again. Daniel is also frustrated because his family has already booked flights and hotels. My parents suggested that maybe we could push the wedding back a few months so Mia has time to recover and bring the baby. But that would mean starting over with planning in many ways, and it would likely push the wedding into the following year because of venue availability. I feel terrible because I do want my sister there. She's my only sibling, and we've always been pretty close. At the same time, this wedding has been planned for over a year, and changing the date now would create a huge financial and logistical mess. Mia has stopped talking to me except for short messages, and my mom keeps saying I'm being stubborn and selfish. Daniel thinks we should stick with the original plan because changing everything would be unfair to both of us and to our guests. Now I'm stuck feeling guilty, but also frustrated because I don't think I did anything wrong by scheduling my wedding long before anyone knew about the pregnancy. AITA for refusing to change my wedding date, even though it means my sister probably won't be able to attend because she will have just given birth. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she replaced my daughter as the flower girl at the last minute. My sister Lily and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're only 2 years apart, but she has always been the golden child in our family. She's outgoing, confident, and very successful in her career. I'm quieter and more reserved. Growing up, I never really minded the comparisons because we were different people, but sometimes it still stung. I'm 34 now, married with a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. Emma absolutely adores my sister. Lily has always been the fun aunt who brings little gifts, plays games, and lets Emma stay up past bedtime during visits. Because of that, Emma was beyond excited when Lily got engaged last year. Right after the engagement party, Lily asked if Emma could be the flower girl at the wedding. She asked Emma directly in front of the whole family and even gave her a tiny flower crown as a surprise. Emma was ecstatic. For weeks, she told everyone at school that she was going to be a flower girl. She practiced tossing petals around the living room while my husband and I pretended to be wedding guests. Over the next several months, Emma talked about the wedding constantly. We bought her a dress that Lily approved, and Emma even helped pick the basket she would carry. Lily sent me photos of color palettes and decorations, sometimes asking Emma what flower she liked best. It really felt like she was including her. About 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Lily called me and sounded weirdly nervous. She said she needed to talk about the flower girl situation. I thought maybe she was worried Emma might get stage fright or something, but what she actually said completely caught me off guard. She told me that her fiancé's sister had a daughter who had really been hoping to be part of the wedding. Apparently, the girl is around the same age as Emma, and the fiancé's family had started making comments about how it would be nice for their side of the family to have a child in the ceremony. I immediately asked if Lily meant Emma would share the role. I figured 2 flower girls wasn't a big deal. Lots of weddings do that. But Lily said that might look crowded, and that her wedding planner suggested keeping it simple. Then she told me she had decided to make the fiancé's niece the flower girl instead. I was honestly speechless for a moment. I asked what that meant for Emma. Lily said Emma could still walk down the aisle, but just without the petals. She suggested Emma could hold a small sign or maybe sit with me instead if she felt shy. The problem is that Emma has been talking about being the flower girl for almost a year. She thinks that role is special. To her, that's the entire point. Taking away the petals basically removes the thing she's been excited about. I told Lily that Emma was going to be heartbroken and asked why she didn't just have 2 flower girls. Lily got defensive and said weddings involve compromises, and she was trying to keep the peace with her future in-laws. I said that making a 6-year-old cry to keep adults happy didn't seem like a great compromise. After the call, I talked with my husband about it. We agreed we should at least explain it gently to Emma. When we did, she started crying almost immediately. She kept asking if she had done something wrong or if Aunt Lily didn't want her anymore. That broke my heart. I called Lily again and told her how Emma reacted. I asked one more time if she would reconsider having 2 flower girls. Lily said no and told me I was making the situation bigger than it needed to be. At that point, I told her I didn't think we would attend the wedding if Emma was being pushed aside like that. Now my family is split. My parents say Lily is under a lot of pressure and I should still go to support her. My mom even suggested I just not tell Emma the details and say she decided not to do it. But Emma already knows. Some relatives say I'm overreacting because weddings are stressful and it's not worth causing a family rift over a flower girl role. Others say Lily handled this terribly and should have known better than to promise a kid something like that and then take it away. Lily is furious with me now. She says I'm punishing her and threatening to skip one of the most important days of her life over something minor. She also said Emma will get over it. Maybe she's right that kids bounce back quickly, but right now my daughter feels rejected by someone she idolizes. Part of me wonders if I'm letting my own history with Lily affect my reaction. But another part of me feels like if I show up smiling at that wedding, I'm basically telling Emma that her feelings don't matter. So now the wedding is a month away, and I'm seriously considering not going at all. AITA? AITA for refusing to keep funding my friend's dream business after I realized she was using my money while telling everyone she built it alone? I, 33F, have been close friends with Jenna, 32F, since college. We met during our freshman year when we were both in the same marketing class and quickly bonded over late study sessions, shared apartments, and the usual early adulthood struggles. For most of our 20s, we were inseparable. Even after we started working full-time and living in different parts of the city, we still talked almost daily. About 2 years ago, Jenna started talking about her dream of opening a small bakery. She has always loved baking and is honestly very good at it. Her cakes and pastries were popular at every party or gathering we attended. She said she was tired of working retail and wanted to build something of her own. The problem was that Jenna had almost no savings and a lot of student debt. Starting even a small bakery required equipment, permits, rent, and supplies that she simply could not afford. I work in finance and have been relatively careful with my money, so I had a decent amount saved. After months of listening to her plans and spreadsheets, I eventually offered to help her get started. We agreed that I would provide some startup money as a kind of informal investment. We didn't draft a complicated legal contract, which I now realize may have been a mistake. The understanding between us was that I would help cover early expenses like equipment and initial rent, and once the bakery became profitable, she would gradually pay me back. Over the next several months, I ended up contributing much more than I originally expected. The ovens cost more than she estimated. The location deposit was higher than planned. There were licensing fees, renovation costs, and a lot of small expenses that added up quickly. Every time something unexpected came up, she would call me stressed, and I would transfer more money to help keep the project moving. By the time the bakery finally opened, I had contributed around $25,000. At first, I was proud of what she accomplished. The shop looked great, and people in the neighborhood seemed excited about it. I attended the opening day and helped greet customers. Jenna hugged me and thanked me privately for believing in her. But the first sign something was off happened during the opening speech she gave to a small group of friends, family, and early customers. She talked about how hard she had worked to build everything herself and how she had poured all her savings into chasing her dream. She thanked her parents for emotional support and her boyfriend for helping paint the walls. She never mentioned me. I assumed maybe she just forgot in the moment. I didn't want to make things awkward on such an important day for her, so I let it go. Over the next few months, I noticed the same pattern repeating. On social media, she constantly posted about how she built the bakery from nothing and how proud she was of funding it herself. In interviews with a small local blog, she talked about saving for years to make the dream happen. Meanwhile, she was still occasionally asking me for money when things got tight, usually saying it was temporary and she would repay me once sales improved. Eventually, one of our mutual friends sent me a screenshot of a post Jenna made where she wrote about being proud that she had started her bakery with zero financial help from anyone. That was the moment I felt genuinely hurt. I called Jenna and asked why she was telling people she had no help when I had contributed such a large amount of money. She immediately got defensive and said I was taking things too personally. According to her, the posts were meant to inspire people, and it sounded better as a personal success story. I reminded her that my contributions were not small favors, but a major financial investment. She said she appreciated it, but didn't want people thinking the bakery was only successful because someone else funded it. I told her that. Erasing my role completely felt dishonest. She said it was just marketing and that I should be happy the business was growing. A few weeks later, she called asking for another $5,000 because a refrigerator unit broke unexpectedly. That was when I finally told her no. I explained that I wasn't comfortable continuing to fund the business when she publicly claimed she did everything alone. I said I felt like my support only mattered privately when she needed money, but disappeared when she was telling her success story. She got angry and accused me of trying to sabotage her business out of jealousy. She said real friends support each other without demanding recognition. Now she's telling mutual friends that I abandoned her business during a difficult moment, even though I promised to help. Some of them think I should just let the recognition issue go because the bakery is her dream. But from my perspective, I've already given a significant amount of money, and she continues to pretend none of it existed. So, AITA for refusing to keep funding my friend's business after she repeatedly told everyone she built it completely on her own. AITA for refusing to give my brother half of the money I inherited, even though my parents always said we should share everything. I, 34 am, recently inherited a significant amount of money from my grandmother. She passed away late last year after a long illness. My grandmother and I were very close. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of weekends at her house because my parents worked long hours, and she helped raise me in many ways. She taught me how to cook, helped me with homework, and even helped me pay for a portion of my college tuition when my parents were struggling financially. My younger brother Jake, 31M, also had a relationship with her, but it wasn't nearly as close. He visited occasionally, mostly during holidays or family events, but he didn't spend nearly as much time with her as I did growing up. When my grandmother passed, we learned that she had left the majority of her savings to me. It came out to a little over $120,000. She left smaller amounts to a few other relatives and friends, including $5,000 to Jake. The rest of her estate mostly went toward paying off medical bills and funeral expenses. I was honestly surprised by the amount she left me. I knew she cared about me a lot, but I didn't expect to inherit that much. I assumed she might leave something small for both of us. When the will was read, Jake seemed quiet but didn't say anything at the time. A few weeks later, he called me and asked if we could talk about the inheritance. At first, I thought he just wanted to share memories about our grandmother or talk about how strange it felt that she was gone. Instead, he told me he thought the situation was unfair. Jake said that even though the will technically left the money to me, our parents always raised us with the idea that family should share things equally. Growing up, if one of us got something special, we were usually expected to share it with the other. He said that because of that, it only made sense that I split the inheritance with him 50-50ths. I told him that I understood why he might feel hurt, but it wasn't my decision how the money was divided. Our grandmother made that choice herself. Jake argued that just because it was her decision doesn't mean it was the right one. He also pointed out that he is currently in a much worse financial situation than I am. I have a stable job in IT and own a small condo. Jake works freelance and has had a lot of inconsistent income over the last few years. He said splitting the money would help him pay off debt and get back on his feet. I tried to be sympathetic, but I also felt uncomfortable overriding what my grandmother specifically decided in her will. She was always very deliberate with money and planning. It doesn't seem likely that this distribution was an accident or oversight. When I explained this to Jake, he said I was hiding behind technicalities to justify being selfish. Things got more complicated when my parents got involved. Jake apparently told them about the conversation, and they called me a few days later to discuss it. My mom said that while my grandmother had the legal right to divide the money however she wanted, it would be the kind and fair thing for me to share with my brother. My dad agreed and said that families should support each other, especially when one person is struggling. They both emphasized that Jake is going through a rough period financially and that helping him could prevent long-term problems for him. I told them that I had already considered helping Jake in some ways, but giving him half of the inheritance felt like ignoring my grandmother's wishes. They responded that my grandmother probably assumed I would naturally share with my brother because of how we were raised. Over the next few weeks, the pressure continued. Jake started sending me messages about his bills and debt, explaining how life-changing the money would be for him. My mom keeps saying that this situation is creating tension in the family that could easily be resolved if I just agreed to split the money. At one point, Jake even said that if our grandmother truly intended for him to only receive $5,000, then she must have misunderstood how much he was struggling financially. I don't know if that's true. My grandmother and Jake didn't talk very often in the last few years, but she definitely knew he had unstable work because it came up during family gatherings. I also want to be clear that I'm not planning to spend the money recklessly. My plan is to put most of it toward paying off the remaining mortgage on my condo and investing the rest. This would give me long-term financial security, which is something my grandmother always encouraged. But now I feel like no matter what I do, someone in my family will be upset. If I keep the money, Jake and possibly my parents will see me as selfish. If I give him half, I feel like I'm disregarding a very intentional gift from my grandmother. I'm still open to helping Jake in smaller ways, like assisting with a specific debt or emergency. But he's made it clear that anything less than splitting the inheritance equally will feel like a betrayal to him. Now the situation has turned into a constant source of tension in my family, and I'm starting to question whether I'm being too rigid about the whole thing. AITA for refusing to split the inheritance equally with my brother, even though my parents say it's what family should do. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left me, even though she needs it more. I'm 34M and my sister is 31F. Our parents passed away within 2 years of each other. It was devastating, and the whole family was pretty shaken for a while. They left behind the house we grew up in. It's not a huge place, but it's a solid 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood that's now worth a lot more than it used to be. When the will was read, it turned out the house was left to me. This wasn't a surprise to me because my parents had talked to me about it years ago. I had been the one helping them maintain the house, doing repairs, paying for a few upgrades when they couldn't afford it, and staying with them on weekends when my dad's health got worse. My sister moved across the country in her early 20s and barely came back except for holidays. My parents were always very clear that they loved both of us equally, but they also said the house should go to the person who actually intended to keep it and take care of it. My sister had told them multiple times she had no interest in living there again. After our mom passed, my sister suddenly started acting very differently about the house. At first, it was small comments like, "Wow, houses here are worth a fortune now," or "You're really lucky you got this place." I thought she was just making conversation, but it slowly turned into more direct conversations about fairness. She started saying things like our parents should have split the estate evenly and that she was basically left with nothing. That's not exactly true. My parents had savings that were split between us, and she got a decent amount plus their car. The house is the most valuable asset, though. I told her I was planning to move into the house full-time and fix it up. I've been renting for years, and the idea of living in my childhood home actually meant a lot to me. She then told me she and her husband were struggling financially and that the house would change their lives. Apparently, her husband lost his job last year, and they've been dealing with debt. She said if they had the house, they could either sell it or move in and start over. I told her I understood that things were tough, but the house wasn't something I was willing to give up. I had already started repairs and paid a lot out of pocket. I also reminded her that she had gotten a good chunk of money from the inheritance already. That's when the pressure really started. She began calling me selfish and said I was choosing property over family. She told me I don't even have kids, so I don't need a whole house, while she and her husband want to start a family soon. She also started bringing other relatives into it. Now I'm getting calls from my aunt and one of my cousins saying I should at least consider letting my sister live there or selling it and splitting the money. My aunt even said our parents probably didn't realize how unfair it would end up being. What really bothered me was when my sister told people that I manipulated our parents into leaving the house to me because I was around more. That honestly hurt a lot because the reason I was around more was because someone had to help them. Last week, she came to visit and asked if we could talk in person. I thought maybe things had cooled down, but the conversation went downhill quickly. She basically asked me to sign the house over to her. Not sell it to her. Just give it to her because family should help family. I said no. She started crying and said I was ruining her life and that if our parents could see this, they'd be ashamed of me. I told her that wasn't fair and that I was simply honoring the decision they made. She left angry and later posted something vague on social media about how greed shows people's true colors. Now some extended family members think I'm heartless. A few friends say I should compromise somehow, like letting her stay there temporarily or selling it and sharing the money to keep the peace. But this house isn't just money to me. I grew up here. I helped maintain it for years. My parents specifically chose to leave it to me because they knew I wanted to keep it in the family and live there. I also can't shake the feeling that if the situation were reversed, she wouldn't give it to me. At the same time, the constant pressure and accusations are getting exhausting, and part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn by refusing to consider any kind of arrangement. So AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left to me, even though she says she needs it more? AITA for refusing to help my sister after she borrowed something of mine and then blamed me when it caused problems? I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and for most of my life, I was the one who helped with homework, drove everyone around once I got a car, and generally cleaned up messes. My sister Lena, 26F, is the opposite. She's charming, funny, and people tend to excuse her behavior because she has this way of making everything sound like a harmless mistake. Growing up, Lena constantly borrowed things without asking. Clothes, makeup, school supplies, even money. If I complained, my parents would say she's your sister or just let it go. It created a pattern where Lena assumed anything of mine was automatically available to her. Over the last few years, I've worked really hard to build a stable life. I finished grad school, got a decent job, and last year I bought my first car. It's nothing fancy, but it's reliable, and I paid for it completely on my own. I'm very proud of it because I spent years saving for the down payment. A few months ago, Lena asked if she could borrow the car for a day because hers was in the shop. I hesitated, but eventually agreed because she promised she would only use it to get to work and back. When she returned it, the tank was almost empty and there were coffee cups and wrappers everywhere. I was annoyed but not surprised. After that, I told her I wasn't comfortable lending it again unless it was a real emergency. About 3 weeks ago, I woke up on a Saturday morning and noticed my car was gone. At first, I thought maybe it had been towed or stolen, but then I saw a text from Lena from around midnight saying, "Hey, I borrowed your car. Mine broke again. I'll bring it back tomorrow." I was furious. She hadn't asked, and she clearly knew I would have said no. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Later that afternoon, she called me, sounding stressed. She admitted she had driven 2 hours away with some friends to attend a birthday party. On the way back, they got pulled over because one of her friends was apparently hanging out the window filming a video. Lena ended up getting a ticket because she was the driver. Here's where things got worse. The officer ran the registration and realized the car wasn't registered to Lena. According to her, the officer asked if she had permission to drive it, and she panicked and said yes, but then started rambling about how it was basically shared. She told me the officer warned her that if the owner reported the car taken without permission, it could turn into a much bigger issue. When she told me this, she laughed nervously and said, "So please don't freak out about it." I absolutely freaked out. I told her she had taken my car without asking, driven it hours away, gotten a ticket, and now my name was tied to the whole situation because the car is registered to me. Instead of apologizing, she got defensive. She said I was overreacting and that nothing actually happened. She also said that if I had just been more flexible about lending the car, she wouldn't have had to take it without asking. That comment really set me off. I told her she was not entitled to my property and that she had basically stolen my car. She came back the next day and dropped the car off in my driveway. She didn't even come inside. Later, she texted asking if I could help pay the ticket because it technically happened in your car. I refused. I told her she created the situation and she needed to deal with the consequences. Now, my parents are involved. They think I'm being too harsh and say family should support each other. My mom said Lena is already stressed about money and that helping with the ticket would show goodwill and calm everything down. I pointed out that Lena took my car without permission and could have gotten me into serious legal trouble. My dad said that's dramatic and that siblings fight but eventually move on. Lena has now told several relatives that I'm threatening to report the car as stolen if she doesn't pay me back for gas and cleaning the mess she left in the car. I never actually said I would report it, but I did say what she did was technically stealing. Some relatives are saying I'm escalating things and that it's cruel to hold this over her head. Others think she crossed the line by taking the car in the first place. At this point, I've hidden my spare key and told Lena she's never allowed to drive my car again. My parents keep insisting I'm damaging the relationship over one mistake, but to me it feels like the latest example in a long history of her ignoring boundaries. So now I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable for refusing to help her with the ticket and making it clear she can't use my car anymore. AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my house permanently after I spent years paying for it and renovating it. Even though he claims he deserves it because it's the family home, I, 36M, have been dealing with a situation with my older brother, Ethan, 40M, that has caused ongoing tension in my family and in my household. I feel like I'm in the right, but after speaking to relatives, I'm being told I'm selfish. So I need an outside perspective. Some background. About 12 years ago, my parents inherited a house from our grandparents. It's a modest 3-bedroom home in a decent neighborhood. Not extravagant, but solid and well located. At the time, my parents were already stretched financially, so they asked if either Ethan or I wanted to take responsibility for it. Ethan said he wasn't ready. He was building his career and didn't want the extra financial responsibility. I, on the other hand, was in a stable job and offered to take the house on, cover all the expenses, and handle maintenance. From the moment I moved in, the house needed work. The roof leaked, the kitchen appliances were outdated, the bathrooms were falling apart, and the yard was overgrown. Over the years, I spent tens of thousands of dollars repairing, renovating, and upgrading everything. I replaced the roof, redid the kitchen, installed new plumbing and flooring, and landscaped the yard. I also handled all property taxes, utilities, and repairs. Ethan visited occasionally, but rarely helped financially or physically, and when he did, it was minimal. After about 8 years, my parents officially transferred the house into my name, acknowledging the years of maintenance and investment I had made. Ethan was happy for me at the time and congratulated me on finally owning the house legally. The problem started last year. Ethan's career took a hit, and he went through a divorce. Suddenly, he needed a place to live. At first, I assumed he might ask to stay temporarily while he got back on his feet, which I would have considered. Instead, he told me that the house really belongs to the family, and that as the older brother, he should live there now that he has a need. He insisted that I had already had my time in the house, and that it was only fair I let him take over. I explained that the house is legally mine, that I've spent years paying for everything, and that I renovated it extensively while he did nothing. He said that didn't matter because he grew up in the house, and it has sentimental value for him. He also reminded me that I benefited from the house's inheritance indirectly, and that it would be wrong for me to keep it when he was struggling. I tried to compromise. I offered that he could stay in the guest room for a few months while he sorted out his situation, and he could contribute to utilities and groceries. He refused, saying he wouldn't be comfortable living as a guest in what should be his family home. He said that waiting or renting elsewhere would make him feel like he was being treated unfairly. After our argument, Ethan went to our parents, telling them I was being greedy and unkind. My parents acknowledged that the house is mine legally, but pressured me to consider letting him live there anyway, framing it as an act of compassion for family. They even suggested I could sell in the house at a discount, which I found frustrating because I've invested years of money, time, and effort. The conflict has escalated in other ways. Ethan has told extended family members that I am keeping the house from him out of spite. Some relatives have reached out to me, criticizing me for not sharing the family home. Family gatherings have become tense because everyone now has an opinion, and I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my legal rights and my reputation within the family. I've also noticed that Ethan subtly tries to guilt-trip me when I make improvements or spend money on the house, implying that it should have been his and that I'm flaunting it. My relationship with him has deteriorated to the point where I avoid discussing the house entirely unless absolutely necessary. From my perspective, I took responsibility for the house when no one else would. I funded all repairs and renovations, and I followed through on years of maintenance and bills. Suddenly being asked to hand it over because Ethan now has a need feels unfair, especially since he had years to step up and never did. I've considered other compromises like helping him find a rental nearby, assisting with moving costs, or even co-owning the house if he wanted to invest his own money into it. But he refuses anything that doesn't involve me giving him full control or permanent residency. I'm starting to feel trapped between maintaining my rights and property, protecting my home and family, and preserving relationships with my parents and extended family. My parents and some relatives think I should just give in to avoid conflict, while I feel like I would be penalized for acting responsibly for so many years. So, AITA for refusing to give my brother the house, even though it's technically the family home, and he now claims he needs it more than I do? From my perspective, I earn the right to keep it through years of investment, but others say I'm being too rigid and selfish. I'm not sure where the line is between protecting what's mine and being a bad sibling. AITA for refusing to let my roommate stay in our apartment rent-free indefinitely, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go. I, 32F, live with a roommate, Emma, 30F, in a two-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. We've been living together for about 4 years. Overall, our arrangement has been fine. We split rent and utilities evenly and generally respect each other's space. I consider Emma a friend, but we have very different approaches to money and responsibility, which has occasionally caused tension in the past. Recently, Emma lost her job due to company downsizing. I was sympathetic at first and offered to help her look for a new position. A week after she was laid off, she came to me and asked if she could stay in the apartment rent-free until she found work. I agreed to let her skip rent for 1 month, thinking it would give her breathing room to get back on her feet. I also encouraged her to apply for unemployment and other assistance programs. Initially, the arrangement seemed manageable. Emma contributed in small ways around the apartment, cooking dinner a few times, doing dishes, and taking out the trash. I assumed she would find a job within a few weeks and start paying her share again. However, after the first month, Emma's situation became more complicated. She had not applied for several jobs she was qualified for and claimed that she was waiting for the perfect opportunity. She also began asking for help with groceries, utilities, and even gas money, saying that she could not afford any of these things while she was unemployed. I reminded her that I had already covered 1 month's rent for her and had offered to help her look for work, but she said that wasn't enough. 2 months into her unemployment, Emma suggested she might need to stay rent-free indefinitely because she had nowhere else to go and moving in with someone else was stressful. I explained firmly that our apartment was my home too, and while I wanted to help her, I could not afford to cover her indefinitely. I also said that her lack of urgency in finding work made me uncomfortable because I was effectively subsidizing her lifestyle. Emma reacted badly. She accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and not really her friend. She insisted that since I had a stable job and could afford the rent, I should naturally support her until she got back on her feet. She also began leaving her dishes in the sink for days, piling laundry in the living room, and using my personal items without asking. I tried setting clear boundaries. I told her she could stay rent-free for 1 additional month if she signed up for at least 5 job applications a week and actively pursued work. Emma refused, saying that these requirements were unreasonable and controlling. She implied that if I didn't allow her to stay indefinitely, she might move out and ruin our friendship. Emma also began involving mutual friends, sending messages implying that I was being cruel and unkind for refusing to help her indefinitely. Some friends expressed sympathy for her situation and suggested I should be more generous. Others understood that my offer of temporary support was reasonable, but that allowing indefinite stay would be unfair. As the situation continued, I started noticing more strain on our living environment. Emma left her personal items scattered around the apartment, neglected cleaning responsibilities, and began staying up late with friends she invited over without asking. I felt increasingly like my home was no longer mine and that my generosity was being taken for granted. I offered alternative solutions to help her without compromising my well-being, assisting her in finding temporary housing, helping her connect with short-term roommate opportunities, contributing to a smaller portion of her initial move-in costs elsewhere, or helping her network for jobs. She refused all alternatives, claiming that only living with me rent-free would solve her problems. She also threatened to cut off our friendship if I didn't comply. At this point, I feel exhausted and stressed. I genuinely want to help Emma and maintain our friendship, but I also need to protect my home, finances, and mental health. Allowing her to stay indefinitely would likely lead to long-term resentment, strain our relationship, and disrupt my daily life. I've tried repeatedly to communicate calmly, empathize with her situation, and offer practical solutions, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve permanent rent-free residency. Even though I've been firm, I feel guilty because she is upset and because some friends and family have criticized me. At the same time, I feel justified because compromising would not solve her problems and would create significant challenges for me. AITA for refusing to let my roommate stay in our apartment rent-free indefinitely. Even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and insists my refusal is selfish and cruel. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding over a family secret. I, 29F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and late-night talks. Our family is fairly traditional, and my parents have always emphasized appearances and reputation. Emily has always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, which sometimes frustrated me, but I always try to be supportive. Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 28M, about a year ago. They had been dating for 4 years, and I genuinely liked Mark. I thought he was kind, funny, and genuinely loved my sister. When I started planning the wedding, I was thrilled to help. I helped pick the venue, the dress, and even offered to organize the rehearsal dinner. Everything seemed perfect until I found out something that made me question the whole situation. About 2 months before the wedding, I ran into one of Mark's co-workers at a coffee shop. She recognized me from the wedding group chat and mentioned something about Mark. At first, I didn't think much of it, but she dropped a comment that caught my attention. She said, "I can't believe Mark is still trying to hide this from everyone. I hope Emily finds out before the wedding." I asked her what she meant, but she just smiled awkwardly and left. My curiosity got the better of me, and I started digging. I did a bit of online searching, and I found information about Mark's past that shocked me. He had a criminal record, something that wasn't just a minor offense, but involved fraud and embezzlement at his previous job. I felt my stomach drop. I knew that if Emily found out after marrying him, it could ruin her financially and emotionally. I tried to confirm the information discreetly, and even contacted a mutual friend of Mark's who confirmed the story. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped between my loyalty to Emily and my responsibility to protect her. I decided to talk to her privately. I pulled her aside one evening while we were discussing seating arrangements. I told her what I had found out about Mark's past. Emily's reaction was intense. She denied it, accused me of being jealous, and stormed out. She said she didn't want to hear rumors and that I had no right to interfere. The tension between us escalated over the next few weeks. I tried to give her space, but my conscience wouldn't let me sit quietly while she was making what I genuinely believed was a huge mistake. A week before the wedding, I decided to tell our parents. I thought they might be able to persuade her to at least postpone the wedding until she knew the truth. My parents were furious, not at Mark, but at me. They said I was overstepping, that Emily was an adult and could make her own decisions. They told me to back off, or I would be uninvited from the wedding. I felt isolated and desperate. The night before the wedding, Emily's best friend confided in me that she had noticed Mark behaving strangely around money and was suspicious as well. At that point, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I went to the wedding venue early the next day and asked to speak with Emily privately. I tried to stay calm, but when she refused to listen, I did something drastic. During the ceremony, as Emily was walking down the aisle, I stood up and told everyone present about Mark's criminal record. I explained that I wasn't trying to ruin her happiness, but I felt she deserved to know before making a lifelong commitment. The room went silent. Emily screamed at me, crying, and ran out of the venue. Mark stood there, shocked and angry. My parents were mortified. Half the guests didn't know what was happening, and the other half whispered and looked around, trying to understand the chaos. The wedding was immediately canceled. Emily hasn't spoken to me since. She blocked me on all social media and refused to answer my calls or texts. My parents are furious and have made it clear that they blame me for ruining their plans and embarrassing them in front of friends and extended family. Mark reportedly moved out of town, and no one has heard from him. I feel guilty for how I handled it, especially making such a public scene, but I also feel relieved that Emily didn't marry someone who could have hurt her badly. I wanted to warn her privately, but she refused to listen, and I didn't see another option. I've tried apologizing to her, but she's not ready to talk. My parents treat me like I'm a villain, and my relationship with my sister seems permanently damaged. I'm torn between believing I did the right thing by protecting my sister and feeling like I overstepped in a catastrophic way. I keep replaying in my mind, thinking of ways I could have handled it differently, but I keep coming back to the fact that if I hadn't said anything, Emily might have married Mark and face serious consequences later. So, AITA for publicly exposing my sister's fiancé's criminal past at her wedding, effectively ruining it and straining my relationship with my family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to me? I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Emma, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable despite our differences. I'm more reserved and cautious, while she's outgoing and impulsive. Our parents passed away when Emma was 16 and I was 19, so I took on a lot of responsibility for her. I helped her through school, encouraged her dreams, and tried to provide the stability she didn't have after losing our parents. She often tells me that I shaped her life and that she wouldn't be who she is without me. Fast forward to last year. Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 27M, and immediately started planning her wedding. At first, I was excited for her and wanted to help in any way I could. However, as the planning progressed, I started noticing red flags. Emma began making decisions that seemed inconsiderate toward me and other family members. For instance, she invited a cousin I barely know and even told me she wasn't going to invite my close friend group because it would make the guest list too crowded. She also insisted on a wedding date that conflicted with my best friend's wedding, and when I mentioned that it would be hard for me to attend both, she brushed it off and said, "Your life doesn't revolve around me." The situation escalated last month. Emma asked me to be her maid of honor. I was honored at first, but she started listing tasks that were extremely time-consuming and expensive. She wanted me to plan a bachelorette party in a city across the country, book a hair and makeup trial, make a speech, and even handle some of the catering and decoration choices. I pointed out that my work schedule is demanding and that I had already spent my savings on my own apartment and car repairs, so I couldn't realistically take on everything she was asking. She became visibly upset and said, "I can't believe you're putting money before me." I tried to explain my limits, but she accused me of not caring about her wedding. A few weeks ago, things reached a breaking point. Emma invited a group of her college friends to stay at my apartment while I was out of town without asking me. When I found out, I called her to express how uncomfortable I felt about this. She yelled at me over the phone, saying that I was controlling and that I should be happy she trusted me enough to use my place. I told her that boundaries are important and that I wouldn't feel comfortable letting people stay in my home without permission. She hung up on me. After this, I started reconsidering my involvement in the wedding. I realized that Emma seemed more focused on getting exactly what she wanted than on maintaining a relationship. I told her I couldn't be her maid of honor, and she responded by saying, "If you can't be there for me, maybe you shouldn't come at all." That hurt, but I tried to compromise. I said I could attend the wedding as a guest, though I couldn't participate in planning or any pre-wedding events. She agreed reluctantly. Then came last week. I received a group text from Emma with the final guest list and seating arrangement. To my shock, she had placed me at the far end of the reception hall, next to people I barely know, while giving her fiancé's family front row seats. I felt humiliated, but I didn't say anything immediately. The next day, she sent me another message asking why I hadn't RSVP'd yet. I explained that I needed to check my schedule and finances, but I also told her that I was extremely hurt by the seating arrangement. Her response was, "I don't see why you're making such a big deal. Just come and stop being dramatic." At this point, I was fed up. I texted her a long message explaining that while I loved her, I couldn't attend a wedding where I felt disrespected and unwelcome. I also mentioned that I was disappointed in how she had treated me over the past few months, especially regarding the apartment incident and her insistence on me taking on responsibilities I couldn't manage. She replied with a single word, "Fine." Now, our mutual friends and some family members are upset with me. They say that I'm being unreasonable and that I should just put aside my feelings for one day to celebrate my sister. Some even suggest that my absence will create a family rift. I understand that weddings are important to the bride, but I can't shake the feeling that attending would signal that her behavior toward me is acceptable. I'm also struggling with guilt because I know this will hurt her deeply, and I don't want to damage our relationship permanently. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated me leading up to it. I feel like I'm standing up for myself, but part of me wonders if I should just swallow my pride for one day and go. On the other hand, I can't ignore months of disrespect and boundary violations. I want to preserve my dignity, but I also don't want to be remembered as the sister who refused to support Emma on her big day. Has anyone else faced a situation where standing up for yourself clashed with family expectations? How did you navigate it without completely losing the relationship? I'm open to advice, but I also want honest opinions on whether my choice makes me the bad sister in this scenario. This has caused a lot of tension in our family, and I don't know if there's a way to repair things before the wedding, or if I even should try. I'm trying to do what's right for my mental health and self-respect, but it feels impossible when everyone around me is insisting that I owe her this day. I just want to know if refusing to attend a wedding because of consistent disrespect and boundary violations makes me unreasonable, or if it's okay to protect myself even at the cost of potentially upsetting my sister and family. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in permanently after she helped me renovate my house. Even though she claims she deserves it, I, 35F, have been struggling with a situation involving my best friend, Claire, 34F, that has been causing me a lot of stress and tension in my life, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong or if she's being unreasonable. This is long, but I'll try to give all the relevant details. A little background. Claire and I have been best friends for over 15 years. We met in college and have been inseparable ever since. She's incredibly talented when it comes to interior design, home renovations, and DIY projects, while I work a more traditional 9 to 5 job. About 3 years ago, my husband, Jake, 36M, and I bought our first house together. It was a decent property in a great neighborhood, but it was a complete fixer-upper. The kitchen and bathrooms were outdated. The floors were warped in several rooms. The walls needed painting, and the backyard was overgrown and unusable. We wanted to make our dream home, but knew it would require a lot of time, money, and effort. Claire offered to help, and at first I thought it was just generous. She said she'd love to assist with the renovations, give her professional advice, and even help with some of the labor. I happily agreed because, honestly, her skills were exactly what we needed. Over the course of the next year, Claire became deeply involved. She spent almost every weekend and many evenings helping with electrical work, plumbing, painting, and flooring. She sourced materials, negotiated with contractors, and even bought some items herself like lighting fixtures and cabinets. At times, her financial contributions saved us a significant amount of money, though she always downplayed it. Without her, we would have had to hire professionals for almost every task, which would have added tens of thousands of dollars to the cost. When the renovations were finally complete, the house looked amazing. Claire and I were both proud of what we had accomplished. However, a few weeks later, she started hinting that she might want to move in permanently. At first, it was subtle. She'd make comments about how she knew every corner of the house and how convenient it would be if she stayed closer to work. But over time, the comments became more direct. She started saying that because she had invested so much time, effort, and some money into the renovations, she earned the right to live there. She framed it as mutually beneficial. She would have a place to live without paying rent, and Jake and I would continue benefiting from her skills and expertise. I tried to explain that while we deeply appreciated her contributions, our home is our private space, and we were not comfortable with her living there full-time. I suggested compromises. She could visit frequently, stay for short periods, or help with smaller home projects as needed. She dismissed all of these ideas and insisted that anything less than permanent residency was unfair and ungrateful of us. The situation escalated when she began involving mutual friends. She started telling them how she had built the house almost single-handedly and how we were refusing to acknowledge her contributions by not letting her live there. Several friends confronted me, saying I should be more appreciative of her work and generosity. Some of them implied that it was selfish of me to deny her permanent residency after everything she had done. Claire also started showing up unannounced, claiming she needed to check on things or fix minor details she didn't like. She criticized furniture placement, paint choices, organization, and other small aspects, implying that the house wasn't being maintained properly without her oversight. I set clear boundaries, explaining that while her advice is appreciated, final decisions about the house are ours. She dismissed my boundaries, saying I was controlling and ungrateful. Jake fully supports my position. He agrees that allowing Claire to live with us permanently would disrupt our household routine and privacy, but he's also frustrated by the constant tension it's causing. It's affecting our marriage and our overall well-being, and we've spent hours trying to navigate conversations with Claire and with friends who have been pulled into the drama. I've tried multiple compromises. I offered that she could stay for limited visits, contribute financially if she stayed temporarily, or help with smaller projects and updates to the house. She refuses anything that doesn't involve full-time residency, claiming that her contributions entitle her to live there permanently and warning that if we refuse, our relationship will be irreparably damaged. Her behavior has even started affecting our children. She occasionally takes their side, telling them that they should support family and implying that she should live with us. This creates confusion and tension at home. Jake and I have had to spend significant time explaining boundaries and reasoning, but she continues to pressure us. I've also considered alternative solutions. I suggested helping her find a nearby rental or assisting her with saving for her own property, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve moving in with us. She insists that her time and money spent on renovations gives her a moral claim to live in our home, and anything else would be insufficient recognition of her efforts. Despite repeated attempts to communicate respectfully, establish boundaries, and offer compromises, she continues to pressure us, involve others, and frame the situation as a moral failing on my part. I feel trapped between maintaining my household, protecting our privacy, and preserving family and friendship relationships. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend live in our house permanently after she helped renovate it. Even though she claims she earned that right, I feel like I'm trying to protect my home, my marriage, and my children's environment, but she and some mutual friends portray me as selfish and ungrateful. I'm struggling to determine if I'm truly in the wrong. AITA for refusing to let my adult son live with me indefinitely after he lost his job, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go. I, 52F, am a single mom who has been supporting myself and my son, Ethan, 28M, for most of his life. He recently lost his job in retail after the company downsized, and he reached out to me saying he had nowhere to go. I have a 3-bedroom house that I own, and I agreed to let him stay temporarily until he could figure something out. My understanding was that temporarily meant a few weeks to a month while he looked for work. At first, things seemed fine. Ethan moved in and helped a little around the house with minor chores. I thought he would quickly find another job, but after the first week, he started expressing frustration with the job search and said he didn't want to take anything beneath his experience. I reminded him that we all have to make sacrifices sometimes and that he needed to apply broadly, but he argued that the jobs available were unfair or exploitative. About 3 weeks in, Ethan started leaving dirty dishes in the sink, leaving laundry piled up, and spending hours gaming or watching TV. I told him I would tolerate short stay, but if he wanted to continue living here, he needed to contribute in some way, either by doing chores or helping with bills. He reluctantly agreed, but didn't consistently follow through. A month later, Ethan told me he was considering staying indefinitely because he had nowhere else to go. I explained that I had never agreed to an indefinite arrangement and that my home is also my personal space. He insisted that since I own the house and have a stable income, it would make sense for him to stay as long as necessary. I refused, pointing out that I have responsibilities of my own including mortgage payments, bills, and maintaining my own space. I also explained that I wanted him to become independent and learn to manage his finances responsibly. Ethan became emotional and said I was being selfish and uncaring. He implied that a mother should naturally provide for her child, regardless of age or circumstances. When I stuck to my boundaries, he started involving my friends and relatives, framing the situation as though I was abandoning him in a difficult time. Some relatives told me I should let him stay to support family, while others agreed that it was reasonable to expect him to contribute and eventually move out. The tension in the house increased as Ethan refused to take my advice on looking for more accessible jobs or alternative housing. He became resentful and passive-aggressive, leaving messes and making comments about how unfair my rules were. I reminded him that while I wanted to help, there is a limit to what I can provide, and indefinite residence without contribution was beyond that limit. I also offered practical alternatives. I helped him search for temporary rental options, guided him toward unemployment benefits and local assistance programs, and even offered to co-sign for a short-term apartment if he could provide a plan for paying rent. He refused all alternatives, insisting that none of them would work for him and that only staying in my house would solve his problems. As weeks passed, my stress and frustration increased. I felt like I was being held hostage in my own home. I started sleeping poorly, became anxious about my finances, and worried about the long-term impact on both my independence and our relationship. Despite my willingness to help within reason, Ethan continued to push for permanent living arrangements. Our conversations became confrontational. He accused me of not loving him enough, and I reminded him that love sometimes means setting boundaries. I emphasized that my refusal was not personal, but practical. I wanted him to regain stability and independence rather than become dependent on me indefinitely. I have considered helping him financially in other ways, such as assisting with a security deposit, groceries, or a portion of rent for a temporary apartment. But he rejects anything that requires him to take responsibility. He insists that only moving in with me rent-free will meet his needs. I feel guilty because he is upset and because some family members have criticized me for not letting him stay indefinitely. At the same time, I feel justified because allowing him to live with me permanently without contribution would create ongoing tension, stress, and resentment. It would also prevent him from becoming self-sufficient, which I believe is ultimately in his best interest. AITA for refusing to let my adult son live in my house indefinitely after he lost his job. Even though he claims he has nowhere else to go and insists my refusal is selfish and uncaring. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I've, 28F, always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but constantly clashed over almost everything else. She's always been a very opinionated and headstrong person, while I've tended to be more laid-back and introverted. Our parents try to mediate our arguments, but most of the time, it just felt like they favored Emily because she was the older and more responsible one. Fast forward to now, Emily is engaged to a man named Jared, 34M. I had met him a few times before the engagement, and I had mixed feelings about him. He seems charming on the surface, but tends to be controlling and dismissive, especially toward Emily. He has a habit of making subtle, cutting remarks that Emily laughs off, but honestly, I always felt uncomfortable around him. I never voiced this directly to her because I didn't want to interfere in her happiness. Things came to a head after the engagement announcement. Emily asked me to help with some wedding planning. I agreed initially, thinking I could at least be supportive. But almost immediately, Jared started micromanaging everything. He wanted to control the guest list, the seating arrangements, even the color of the napkins. Every time I offered a suggestion or tried to help, he would make comments like, "Are you sure you know what you're talking about?" Or, "Maybe we should leave this part to the adults." It was subtle, but it was clearly meant to undermine me. Emily laughed it off, saying he's just joking, but I could tell she was starting to get stressed and frustrated. The biggest issue arose with the bridal party. Emily initially asked me to be her maid of honor. I was honored and excited, But the more I interacted with Jared, the more anxious I became about fulfilling the role. He started pressuring Emily to choose friends he liked over family, and he openly criticized my wardrobe choices and ideas for the bachelorette party. He would say things like, "That's not classy enough for our wedding," or "Maybe don't suggest things. You're not really involved in this." Emily would brush it off and say, "He's just particular. You know how he is." I tried to stay out of it, but it was exhausting. 2 months before the wedding, Jared made a very concerning comment in front of Emily and me. We were discussing seating arrangements, and he said, "Honestly, I hope no one from her side causes drama. You know, like your sister." I froze. Emily laughed nervously and said, "He's just teasing." But I didn't feel teased. I felt targeted. He was directly calling me a drama causer, and given how he had treated me since the engagement, it felt like a threat rather than a joke. I told Emily privately later that I was uncomfortable, but she dismissed it, saying she didn't want to make waves and that I should just be patient until the wedding was over. Over the next few weeks, things continued to escalate. Jared started sending me passive-aggressive texts about the wedding plans. One day, he texted me, "Not sure if you understand, but the theme is very specific. Please don't suggest anything else." Another time, he said, "We'd appreciate it if you didn't try to give advice on the flowers. It's really stressful for Emily, and we need things simple." Emily seemed exhausted by these interactions, but refused to confront him. She insisted I should just go along with it and keep the peace. Finally, about a month before the wedding, Jared crossed a line I couldn't ignore. He invited some of his friends to a pre-wedding gathering and explicitly told Emily, in front of me, that I was not welcome. He said, "This is our space, and we want people here who actually support the wedding, not cause tension." I felt humiliated and heartbroken. I had always tried to be a supportive sister, but it was clear that Jared didn't want me involved at all. I tried to discuss it with Emily, but she said, "He's stressed. It's not personal," and asked me to just stay home for that particular event. That was the last straw. I realized that Jared was actively trying to isolate Emily from her family, and he was making it impossible for me to be there without feeling belittled or attacked. I called Emily and told her that I couldn't be in the wedding, and I wouldn't be attending the ceremony either if it meant Jared would be there. I tried to explain that it wasn't about not loving her or wanting to be supportive, but about my mental health and feeling disrespected. Emily cried on the phone and begged me to reconsider, saying that this would hurt her deeply, but I stood my ground. Since then, my parents and other family members have been divided. Some say I'm being unreasonable and selfish, that it's her wedding and I should put aside personal feelings. Others understand my perspective, saying that Jared's behavior was manipulative and toxic. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since my refusal, though I've sent a few messages to let her know I still love her. Jared hasn't reached out, which I'm not surprised by. I feel guilty because I know how important this day is to Emily, and I know she's probably upset. But I also feel like attending would send the wrong message, that it's okay for someone to treat me poorly in the name of a wedding. I also worry about setting a precedent of allowing Jared to control family interactions. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I don't want to burn bridges, but I also can't compromise my boundaries and self-respect. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? This has been weighing on me for months, and I'm still unsure if I'm the asshole in this situation. I'll try to give as much context as possible. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 32F, who is getting married in a few weeks. Growing up, we were very close, almost inseparable, though as adults we've naturally drifted a bit. Our parents passed away when I was 22, and Emily really became my closest family. We've always been honest with each other, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Emily met her fiancé, Jason, 34M, about 2 years ago. Initially, I liked him. He seemed charming, funny, and respectful. But as their relationship progressed, I began noticing some troubling patterns. At first, it was subtle. He would interrupt Emily when she was speaking, make offhand jokes that seemed slightly cruel, or dismiss her opinions in front of others. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting or misreading things. but the more I saw, the more concerned I became. It escalated to him being overtly controlling. He picked her friends for her, criticized the way she dressed, and even monitored her phone under the guise of just being concerned. Emily is an independent, strong-willed woman, so I was shocked to see her letting this happen. I tried talking to her about it multiple times. I'd say things like, "Emily, I don't want to overstep, but I'm worried about how Jason treats you. Or have you noticed that he does X or Y?" Each time, she would get defensive, tell me I was imagining things, or accuse me of being jealous of her happiness. At one point, she even said that I was being dramatic, and that if I can't trust her judgment, maybe I shouldn't be part of her life. I was heartbroken. I felt like I was losing my sister and didn't know how to intervene without damaging our relationship. Fast forward to a few months ago, they got engaged. The wedding planning started, and that's when my concerns intensified. Jason became more controlling in public, and with Emily, micromanaging every detail, including things that should have been her choices. He also made several passive-aggressive comments about me. For example, during a family brunch, he joked that I was too sensitive about minor things and that I should learn to lighten up if I wanted to keep being part of the family. Emily laughed it off, saying he was just joking, but it stung especially because it felt like he was testing boundaries. I continued trying to maintain a relationship with Emily. I'd visit her, call her, and try to keep the bond alive. But Jason's presence was always suffocating. He would hover, make snide remarks, or try to redirect conversations to make Emily seem like she was wrong for things she wanted. One incident really cemented my decision. We were at a family holiday dinner, and Jason criticized Emily for not cooking a dish properly, despite the fact that she had prepared everything according to tradition. Then, in front of everyone, he rolled his eyes when she defended herself. I confronted him quietly afterward, asking why he felt the need to belittle her in front of family. He laughed and said, "I'm just trying to help her become better. She needs guidance." I was floored. Emily didn't say anything, and the rest of the family seemed to ignore it, probably because they didn't want to start a conflict. A few weeks ago, the final straw happened. Emily called me, sounding stressed and on the verge of tears. She told me that Jason had vetoed her choice of wedding dress, arguing it didn't suit the image he envisioned. She said she felt trapped and didn't know how to assert herself without causing a fight. At that moment, I realized that this wasn't a normal disagreement or just pre-wedding stress. This was control, and I couldn't stand by and watch her autonomy be stripped away. I made the difficult decision to refuse attending the wedding. I called Emily and explained as calmly as possible that I loved her, but I could not support a relationship where her partner constantly belittled and controlled her. I told her that I would be willing to be in her life and support her if she reached out, but I could not be part of a celebration that glorified what I saw as an abusive dynamic. I expected anger, tears, maybe a temporary rift, but the response was more intense than I could have imagined. Emily called me repeatedly, crying, begging, and accusing me of being selfish. She said that no matter how much she loved me, if I didn't show up, I was essentially choosing Jason over her. She also texted family members, framing me as someone who couldn't respect her choices and was making a big deal out of nothing. The majority of the family is siding with Emily, saying that I'm being dramatic, ruining her special day, and putting my opinions above her happiness. Only a few cousins have privately told me they understand my concerns, but they haven't publicly intervened. I've tried reasoning with Emily, explaining that supporting someone doesn't mean ignoring harmful behavior, but she refuses to see it. I've received messages from mutual friends calling me the villain and claiming that I should just bite my tongue for one day for my sister. I even had a friend point out that by not attending, I'm essentially cutting ties with my closest family member, which is true, and that thought devastates me. I'm torn. Part of me wonders if I am overreacting and letting my personal dislike of Jason cloud my judgment. Maybe I'm being controlling in my own way by making her feel guilty for not having the wedding I want for her. But another part of me feels that attending would mean endorsing behavior that I genuinely believe is toxic and potentially abusive. I've tried leaving the door open for reconciliation, making it clear that this isn't about hating Emily, but about standing up for what I think is morally right. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior, even though it risks permanently damaging my relationship with her. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.